welcome back to Madseason Sports. Derek McCoy here and Teddy McCraney. Going to go over some wild games over the weekend. What's coming up? We're going to get our bets in. Teddy, how are you, man?
Man, I'm good. This is a lot happened last week, man. A lot to talk about.
It's a lot to unpack. Tell me a little bit about your Georgia and Tennessee take. Before we even played the game, I told my dad it was going to have to be Malachi Starks and our other kid on the other side. I can't even think of his name right now to shut down Tennessee.
Right. Well, before I get into the depth of the game, beforehand, what I said, and I think I said it last week, was when you get an upstart program, which is somebody starts off the season undefeated, that is kind of a program on the rise, so to speak, and then you run up against a team that has been building for championships for years and won a national championship last year, that, sometimes that upstart wins, but 9 out of 10 times the sheer depth of talent is very evident when you watch the game. And Georgia could have beaten Tennessee by 30, and it was not a 2-touchdown game like the score indicated. It wasn't.
Yeah, one of the things I thought that really turned the game to a different level was one, they were able to run the ball with such ease. And Stetson was hitting his passes down the field. Not 100%, but he did well enough to hurt Tennessee. And like I said, it was totally up to our DBs to really come in and man up, so we wouldn't have to roll any coverage and allow Hooker to beat us. And it was I got a couple of comments in some of the groups I'm in. I went in to check out the Tennessee fans and the Georgia fans, and it was like everybody agreed that after 2 or 3 drives, they felt like the game, it was just never going to be any closer than it was.
Right. Stetson Bennett, man, can't say enough about that guy. I've been a fan the whole time, just mainly because he's a walk-on. I love walk-ons. He's obviously on scholarship now. I wish we could find an over-under on, or just a bet of where his statue is going to be built if they win another national championship.
Man, I'm telling you, you can say a lot about him, and I'll say this. I think it is. You take a look at him physically and his stature and just the way he plays the game. He doesn't really equate to – you can't really compare him to a current starter in the NFL. But one of the things I thought was I don't think you're going to see a team not take a chance on a guy who's won – if they do, who's won 2 national titles.
He'll probably still be an undrafted free agent because you don't want to be – I hate to say it, you don't want to be the one that takes one of your 7 draft picks on that guy. If you've got 1 per round, some will have fewer, some will have more. But I like him. There's a place for winners, especially in a backup role in the NFL, and that's if he does make the NFL, that's most likely where he would be, I think. But, hey, look at Chase Daniel. Chase Daniel's made $40 million as a backup.
Out of Missouri.
I think he started 5 games. He's listed at 6 feet tall. He's not that. Always been a little bit on the pudgy side, 225 or so, and man, he's got $40 million, and he started 5 games, so he's averaging about $8 million a start. It's not a bad gig if you can get it, Stetson.
Yeah, and he's definitely not he's not a scrub. Chase Daniel's gotten it done in the NFL when he's come in and they've asked him to play.
Yeah, he was a backup for our Saints. I think was he backing up Justin Herbert now? I think.
Yeah,
but Stetson just has beaten all odds, but he's one of those you take this guy and you got the other 10 that are 4 and 5 stars, or other 20 that he plays with, and then put some on the other side. That can happen where you don't have to have the prototype #1 overall pick in Joe Burrow or somebody like that.
Yeah, I think you really touched on something that was real evident in the game as well. Georgia has been putting together recruiting classes that are much better than Tennessee's. And like you said, the 4 and the 5s and even the 3s, they've been stockpiling.
Yeah, and it was I think as long as Josh Heupel stays there and with NIL and with TV exposure and all that, I think Heupel can do the same thing there. I mean, if Jimbo can do it at A&M, Heupel can do it there, and it appears that Heupel's a much better coach.
Yeah, one of the things that really impressed me about my Bulldogs as well is the defense that came to play. We gave up a cheap touchdown. We turned the ball over and gave up, a field goal early on our first possession. So I really felt like we got cheated out of those 10 points out of the 13 that Tennessee scored. But I do want to say this, that defense showed up and showed out this weekend. And before, like I said, 27-6, 27-13. And like you added earlier, Georgia could have aired the ball out on them. They were throwing it with ease. They were running it with ease. And it could have gotten out of hand quick.
3 more touchdowns that would have been, 48?
Yeah.
48-13 is a beatdown. 27-13 looks good on the scoreboard. And I'll tell you what, and that's why Tennessee's still number 5 in the college football playoff tonight. That's why. Yeah. If that game is a 30-point beatdown, Tennessee's most likely not number 5.
Let's bounce to that real quick. So that they came out with the new rankings, and I think everybody figured Georgia was going to jump to number 1. Then you have Ohio State, Michigan, and then your new number 4, which is TCU. And then you have Tennessee dropping down to 5, and you have Oregon leapfrogging to 6. And then the next game that happened that put LSU at number 7. So what would you think? Would you think that was the game of the day?
Tennessee and Georgia?
Alabama and LSU.
Oh, no doubt. Absolutely.
No doubt.
Yeah. Unbelievable game. LSU's on a roll. Alabama's 2 plays from being undefeated, so that Nick Saban dynasty being over talk is insane. Lane Kiffin said yesterday, he said they're 2 plays from being undefeated. They got the best offensive player in America, which may be a stretch in Bryce Young, and he said they got the best player in America on defense in Will Anderson, and that could be a stretch, but we all know what he's talking about. We know who he's talking about when he says it.
Yeah. That I don't think there's a competition between which game was better, which is kind of interesting because you had the number 1 and number 3 team playing, and then you had the number 6 and number 10 team playing in LSU. But I think the allure to this is there were 2 stories going on here. One, Alabama had already lost to Tennessee.
Right.
And then Tennessee was playing Georgia.
Yeah.
And then I think the other line was the fact that LSU has crept back into this picture and they put it together
at the right time. Brian Kelly's just good. He realized Saturday night was why Brian Kelly came to LSU and left Notre Dame. He had, if there's ever been such thing as a coach plateauing, he had plateaued at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
He had gone as far as he could take them because otherwise he could still be like, unfortunately, Michigan that may get into the playoff and get thumped. And he had experienced that. I don't know how many times he made the playoff. I know it's probably 2 or 3, and he's gotten thumped in the playoffs. I don't think Notre Dame's won a playoff game. I could be wrong, but I don't think I don't know if they have.
Yeah.
And they certainly haven't won one. And so the old adage is if you can't beat them, join them. So he joined the SEC, and, man, with that kind of talent, what are you going to do now that you got somebody that can coach too?
And the thing about it is that he hasn't even brought his class in. He hasn't had his class. No. He hasn't put his team together. They lose the first game of the season with FSU because of a missed extra point.
Right.
And everybody is, getting on the boat that this guy was the wrong hire.
Right.
And he was a phenomenal coach at Notre Dame, and I don't think he has near the talent in Notre Dame that he does running through LSU.
No, not even close. I said it on this show. A lot of State fans were down when LSU beat State, and I said, man, this is not the last good team that LSU's going to beat this year. And so far, they've beat 3 good teams. They beat Alabama, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss.
Yeah.
And not going to be the last good team they beat either. Well, I don't know that. Well, Arkansas is just down. They're not what they were, and I guess we'll see. That's a big game this week. That line's so crazy. It's only around 3, which is insane to me.
Do you think if LSU doesn't make it to Georgia this year for the SEC championship, they don't go to Atlanta, do you think they're going to be happy? Or do you think they're going to give him a pass? Because to me, thrusting him in this position right now at LSU is exactly why they hired him. And now that now that he's completely flipped everything with their season, wholeheartedly, these fans have got behind him.
Right.
They're, for all intents and purposes, they're gonna head to Atlanta. Now there's some, Ole Miss has something to say about that. And if
LSU 100% is in control of their destiny to Atlanta.
So, do you think it's going to be one of those, hey, we're happy but we're disappointed, or?
Yes, that's what I think. Well, if they were logical, yes, but college football fans, we're just not logical. I mean, Ole Miss and Mississippi State, we think we ought to be playing for the national championship. I mean, would that be great? Yeah. Is it realistic year in and year out? No. LSU can. I don't know about year in and year out, talent-wise. If Brian Kelly can recruit, and he's got LSU has the biggest single-state hotbed in the entire country. If you start talking about players in the NFL, per capita, not LSU, but state of Louisiana is either at the top or near the top.
Yeah. And
if you could just get your home kids to stay home, which is difficult. Alabama always is going to go and get Louisiana and get some, and Texas A&M's always going to. And, LSU has so much talent in that state, they wanted Dak Prescott to play linebacker.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Considering his records just got broke this weekend.
Yeah, and Dan Mullen had something to do with that. I'm not going to take anything away from Dan on that, but it's just so much talent in LSU. Brian Kelly's good. We'll see what he's going to do moving forward. But, yeah, if they slip up and lose a game and don't make it to Atlanta, LSU fans will have to be okay. Here's the thing. Really, all they needed is Alabama to beat Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Because if Alabama beats Ole Miss, I think even if LSU slips up, if them and Alabama still have 2 losses, they've got the tiebreaker.
I would say anything on a given Saturday. I'm not going to go out and say that this season has been crazy in the SEC. Obviously, I think that everybody's surprised where Tennessee came out of, and I think everybody's surprised where LSU's ended up right now. But there hasn't really been, Alabama's lost twice. But like you said, they lost on, 2 plays. They're undefeated. But there hasn't, I'm not going to say that this weekend with Ole Miss, and we'll get to that. But I think Alabama still handles them. Watching the LSU and Alabama game, what did you see the difference between this Alabama team that would normally go into Death Valley, and you could obviously tell. It was a great game, back and forth, lead changes. You wanted it, you got it. Fans are crazy. But what did you see that was different about this Alabama team? There was something I saw, and I want to see if we agree on it.
Well, I'm not going to try to guess at what you're thinking, but I'll tell you what I saw. It was more LSU than Alabama. That just, I don't know if it's transfer portal. I don't know. LSU, first of all, they had nothing to lose and everything to gain, and so they could play. Alabama, on the other hand, had everything to lose, and they lost it. And you just think about it. With LSU you can play a lot more loose when you have nothing to lose, and the dynasty for Nick Saban isn't dead. I don't believe that. But that aura of invincibility of Alabama just going to steamroll everybody is probably waning, which that don't mean the dynasty's dead. He could go undefeated next year and win it again.
Right. He just won't beat them as bad as he used to.
Right. And, everybody's saying Bryce Young will be gone, but if you think there's not a stud waiting behind him, you're crazy.
Yeah.
Don't know his name right now. I could find it in 2 seconds, but it's just going to be – and the transfer portal is going to change things. Transfer portal has leveled the playing field. Transfer portal is the only reason that Ole Miss is 8-1.
And in combination with NIL deals.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I saw. I saw an out, and this is kind of wild to me because, Nick Saban. I saw a defense that couldn't stop a guy, throwing the ball down the field the same way that Tennessee beat them. And ironically, or coincidentally, both of them are nimble on their feet. And I think Daniels was much more nimble on his feet than Hooker was when they played.
Right.
But they both took advantage of a susceptible defense with Alabama in their DBs.
Right.
And they, for most of the game, Will Anderson was never. I mean, he flushed him out of the pocket, no question.
But then there was nobody tackling.
Right, and then he just ran free. I mean,
Right.
and the kid had a great game, and you saw this coming though. You saw the guy getting his legs underneath him, and you saw this kid could be dangerous.
Yeah, he was gaining confidence too.
Yeah,
He probably, if he had it, lost the deer in the headlights look if this is Alabama, But it's also LSU. I mean, I don't get into the LSU at night, I guess, has lost some of the mystique to it, but still a tough place to play. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't it register on the Richter scale or something like that when they scored that 2-point?
yeah.
We can look it up, but something registered. It was so loud that it registered on some kind of device that they have there.
Man, I'm going to say it. What balls
Absolutely.
did Kelly have?
That goes back to the LSU didn't have anything to lose.
Yeah.
Might as well win it.
I mean, this game and the result, you don't know. But the mood towards Kelly completely changes if this guy doesn't get those 2 points.
Oh, sure.
And then, and then you look at it and you're like, man, I mean, they really don't have anything to lose. He hasn't had look, he's not going anywhere. He hasn't had his players. He hasn't had the benefit of a full recruiting cycle. He's going to be a good coach there.
Yeah, and college football fans, we want things right now, and I can tell you LSU's quarterback of the future is Walker Howard. He's an absolute stud.
Excuse me.
Oh yeah. So, Mississippi State, just a little bit, man. It's all really something really funny. Well, first of all, Mississippi State's winning 24-6 at halftime, I think, and Auburn comes back. Did you see Mike Leach putting the folding chairs up? He said the wide receivers seem to be more interested in sitting over there instead of being prepared to go in the game or pull for their teammates. And if that's the case, we just don't need the chairs. So he went over there and personally himself, he folded them up, and somebody came behind him and picked him up. It was just a crazy game.
And people were very pissed at him after the game. I float from chat room to chat room, of course, because I want to see, what's the latest results on some of the players and whatnot, and excuse me, and they were calling for him. They were tired of him. They were pissed off. You have your fanatics, and I get it. Georgia chat rooms are some of the worst, and it made me pull away from my such loyalty. I love them. Can't believe some of the things they say, but I think that's every single fan base. They have that pocket.
It is.
Of unrealistic fanatics who have never played the sport, have never experienced the camaraderie, and they're just coaching from the couch, and and that's who they are. But that game gets wicked if he doesn't get that 2-point conversion, and you're having a different conversation today. But State, Auburn in control. Mike Leach happens, and then you get a game that is coming down to the wire.
Yeah, it's. Of course, we're unfortunately so many people were locked in, including myself, were locked into the LSU and Alabama game instead of the State and Auburn game. So, especially with it being what appeared to be well in hand for Mississippi State, that so a lot of people didn't watch as much of that game as they normally would, including myself because of what was happening in Baton Rouge. But man, if I'm a State fan, I don't get upset with Mike Leach just yet. I mean, at the end of next year, if you're not completely happy, well, first of all, you got to see what's going to happen when Will Rogers can come back,
and he should.
Yeah. It's not like they can hold it against him and not draft him because he's still because he doesn't have eligibility left. They can do that in baseball.
Yeah.
But Will Rogers is going to be fine. And we're really going to see if long term if this offense is going to work in the SEC. My concern is for Mississippi State is recruiting. Can they recruit? Which I'm ecstatic for that fan base for what happened when John Cohen left
and how they increased the.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And state fans and alumni and people should be very, very proud of that because, hey, I'm on Miss Fan. Lane Kiffin's he's brought it up numerous times about, hey, we're going to have to do this to compete. And state people stepped up after Cohen left. And so I think they'll be fine.
It was awesome to see. It was awesome to watch
within 24 hours how it tripled or quadrupled or whatever it did. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and tell everybody what you're talking about with the number of participants that people signed up to be.
Yeah, within 24 hours, John Cohen learning that John Cohen was going to leave, it just the number I don't know the exact number, but it either the number of donors and Bulldog Club members or their initiative, the Bulldog Initiative, I believe is what it's called. The number of people quadrupled or tripled or something and pumping a lot more money in there. What I heard somebody say is very important is it's not just large corporations, which those are important, but
it's the $200 a weekend guy to go see the game that counts.
Yeah, it's if you go see somebody, if you see 1,000 people on a weekend and everybody gives X amount of dollars, man, that money adds up.
Yeah.
I mean, you start adding, $500,000 a month in fundraising, man, you're talking about $6 million a year. And that $6 million a year can do some things and get some players there. And then if you can put a good coach with it, then your future's turning. Unlike supposedly whatever the $30 million for Texas A&M was.
Yeah, it's like Steve Robertson said last weekend. That was amazing, their participation in it. And I think everybody, I think everybody that went out and did join and decided, hey, look, I'm going to be a giver, I'm going to be a donor to help this happen and help land more players with the NIL money.
Yeah.
I think they knew. I think they heard that Cohen, that was part of the decision that was made. Look, it's like Steve said, the guy's homegrown. You know he's homegrown. He's been there. He's played baseball. He was a coach. He really instilled a great atmosphere there. And now he's leaving, and it leaves a lot of people questioning why. And, we discussed, I don't think it's something like money that's going to lure Cohen away. I think it's kind of what was said, but it wasn't really talked about. It's the NIL money.
And it's going to be talked about more and more and more. It's just going to snowball until there's some kind of national regulation with all 50 states on a level playing field. And until then, which still, even if they do regulate it, if this one school's got more donors, they got more donors. Ain't nothing that anybody can do about it. And the NCAA doesn't have any power to do about it. It's going to unfortunately have to be government, which I'm not crazy about.
Yeah, I'm not either. One less vote. I want to throw this one in here. Because I think it's gonna naturally spark where's he going. I know. Look, it's like we just said. Liberty is a very affluent area.
Yeah,
they have a lot of money there.
Yeah.
And they just showed it when they extended Hugh Freeze's contract, and that's what I wanted to bring up. Liberty goes to Arkansas and beats them in Arkansas. And although his contract is X amount, I see him leaving.
Yeah. Don't know where. Everybody wants, the hot topic is Auburn. Even Hugh Freeze, his exact words were, he said, I don't even know that Auburn would want me. But he still said he's got to listen.
Yeah.
That at this point, they used to say age is just a number. Now buyouts are just a number. Apparently, that's what it is. That's the world we live in. And so wherever he goes, he's like, sure, I can come there, but I got this buyout you got to take care of.
Yeah.
So Liberty, with that extension, in all intents and purposes, all they did was get themselves a buyout.
That's it.
They're getting some of his salary back that they paid him for the success while he was there. So they'll recoup some of that money because they paid him way more than they've ever paid anybody.
He goes to a bowl game. He wins it. Does he stay or leave?
Well, we got some season left to see what other jobs open up. I'm not sure that he's not still blackballed by the SEC and Greg Sankey. That should be, he should have, quote unquote, served his time, but we don't know that with Greg Sankey. If Nick Saban couldn't get him on staff, now that was very soon, but if Nick Saban couldn't get him on staff, is Sankey going to allow him to come in? As an Ole Miss fan, I would love for Hugh Freeze to. He's really good, so I probably wouldn't love it, but it'd be really exciting, at least for a year or so.
Look, I don't think you can. I don't think you can discount, and I don't think you can ignore the attention already above what the SEC gets if Hugh Freeze walks back into a job like Auburn. I think it lights the SEC on fire. I think it makes it by far and away the most exciting group of coaches within a conference. You literally have some of the greatest offensive and defensive minds in the SEC right now as head coaches.
Well, you know what you have in the SEC? You've got the best coaches in college football, and you have the coaches that think they're the best coaches in college football. Because if you're one of the best, or you think you're one of the best, you're in the SEC. Unlike, I understand storybook and all that, Lincoln Riley wanted no part of the SEC, in my opinion. He still doesn't. Let me go over here to USC and maybe get in the playoff every once in a while and just, let me stack up $100 million. Then I may entertain the SEC.
Look, he had his pick.
Yeah.
He had his pick. He was number one.
Yeah.
He was the hottest. He was the hottest prospect to come out.
And he literally ran away from it. He was there. He could have stayed there and played in the SEC. Did not want to do it.
And he's doing pretty decent over there.
Yeah, I can't blame him to pass the least resistance, to get to the playoff. He's got a better shot at USC getting in the playoff than Oklahoma in the SEC.
Yeah, in the SEC, it's like you're a boxer.
Yeah.
And after each fight, you got to fight another one, and it's all on the same night.
Yeah, it's not a cakewalk in between tough opponents. Usually.
Which brings us to our next coach. Your favorite man with the biggest buyout right now in the SEC. Florida, Texas A&M. Florida goes to College Station and wears them out.
It's the biggest disaster I've ever seen in the SEC. On field.
It was
on field.
Yeah.
I'm talking about not just that game. I'm talking about this season. It's the biggest disaster I've seen that I can remember. There's no way with that talent you're supposed to be losing like that. So, like Lane said, Lane said in the first minute of his press conference yesterday, he said this week we have the combination of great players and elite players and elite coaching. And so that was a direct shot at Jimbo. And poor Jimbo. I don't feel sorry for rich people. I don't. Not that kind of rich people. And he's just he's in a world of hurt. Can he come back from that? I don't know. I don't think they're going to fire him after this year. I don't.
So you don't think if he if he loses his remaining SEC games, which he's not going to lose all of them.
I don't know, but I don't think they fire him.
Do you think they have to give him next year?
I think so. You have more available next year. I think.
Yeah, I think they're waiting to see one thing, wholeheartedly. they're waiting to see him get his own quarterback over there.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's had time. You know,
But he just hasn't. He hasn't recruited them.
He hadn't gotten the right ones. I mean, you know, everybody can't be Georgia and get by with a walk on, even with studs all around him. You can't do that. The interesting thing is, in NIL, who would take Jimbo's place after next year? Now, I'm an Ole Miss fan. I say, well, Lane Kiffin's not going to Auburn. I'll say it right here. He's just not.
I agree with you.
I don't have any inside information on that other than it doesn't make sense. Let Jimbo get fired from A&M, and Lane's not always, but he's egged on the donors at Ole Miss to pump in some money. You don't want Lane Kiffin at Texas A&M. If you're in the SEC and you got to play against him with those resources and him, you just don't. So that's a scary thought. I still think, unless Dabo turns it down, Lane Kiffin's going to be Saban's replacement.
We're getting a comment here saying that A&M had 10 or so starters and 10 or so second string not available due to the flu. So it could have been that. Could have been sickness. I think.
Let's hope so.
Well,
he needs something to hide behind.
He does.
I don't wish the flu on anybody, but that would be a saving grace. So that would make sense. For his sake, I hope it's the case. But
I'm going to go and just say they suck. I mean,
yeah, they're not a very good football team.
I'm gonna go with saying the flu was just a contributing factor to the already 1-4 in the SEC, and then ended up 1-5 against Florida, and I think it's only going to get more interesting.
And you talk about not wanting to go to work in the morning. No, I'm sure he wants to go to practice. I'm talking about the press conferences, and imagine what kind of meetings he has with, the powers that be, because you can't make me believe that he don't have to go out and see all those folks. I mean, like I know Mike Leach has a radio show in a restaurant in Oxford. Could you imagine Jimbo having to do one of them? I'm interested. I want to look that up and see if he has one of those radio shows out in public. There's no way. If I was Jimbo and doing a radio show, it'd be like we're doing this one right here. It would not be in a public forum. There's no way.
I think what everybody expected too was when Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher got into their spat on TV about their buying players and whatnot. I figured everybody was expecting to see this battle that was going to finally end up between, Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban again.
Right. He just the epitome of writing a check your mouth writing a check your ass can't cash is what Jimbo did. That's the biggest case of that I've ever seen. And as far as coaching goes.
Yeah.
Just Lane Kiffin says, man, you don't go after Coach Saban, and that was a mistake. And now he's not doing so hot. And their defense even that great. Defense, you'd like to think you could put some studs out there and at least on talent alone disrupt the line of scrimmage, but that has not been the case with all those studs. And you know what? At the end of this season, you know what's going to hurt Jimbo more than anything? There's no rule that says you got to that if I accept a lot of this NIL money that I have to stay here.
Oh, I know.
There's no rule that says that. You talk about, you know what? And Lane Kiffin may be licking his chops.
Yeah, he's the portal king.
He's probably licking his chops. He's probably perusing the roster right now he's recruiting, so I don't think you're supposed to recruit players that are currently enrolled at other schools, but we know that's happening.
I mean, you can wave at them. It's really interesting you say that, because this could be something that you've been talking about ever since Jimbo Fisher left Florida State. Is this a problem that he has with culture? Look, Florida State had a culture problem when he was there.
Yeah.
It was just the fact that he fielded an athlete that was phenomenal at the quarterback position. But he comes to Texas A&M, and I don't know how you can say it's not a cultural problem under him, because he's had the best recruiting classes.
Yeah. Now, last year's class, they're still freshmen, so I understand. that. But he's been stockpiling these for 3 years or so, and
Yeah.
I mean, so that's why I don't think he's going after this year. It's because the people like to use the phrase "come to Jesus," and I think they're going to tell me, get it together this year, or go ahead and you start packing early so you don't have to move all in one day.
I don't know how the amortization deal happens with his buyout, but I would be interesting to see what it would be if they bought him out at the end of the year, as opposed to buying him out in the middle of next year. I got to be honest with you. I hate I feel this way. I want to see it happen. I want to see somebody have to bite that bullet and really make headlines and stroke that check. But like you said with Texas A&M, that could go to 100 people, and
we got to get rid of him.
This would be nothing for them.
Right.
I mean, as bad as it sounds, Teddy, if it ends up being $70 million, they have to buy him out. Go to 1,000 boosters.
Yeah.
Go to 500 of them.
Yeah, we got to have it.
This is what we need.
I don't want it. I mean, I'm like you. I want it to happen, but again, I do have a big heart. It has nothing to do with Jimbo Fisher personally. I want it to happen to get this nonsense under control, because it's just this buyout stuff is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, we're paying people to suck.
Yeah.
It's the only job in the world. That and what they say, and meteorologists can be wrong half the time and keep their job.
And still keep their job. And like you, I don't want to say it because of Jimbo Fisher. I want to see it because of how ludicrous setting this up is. These buyout clauses. It's gotten out of hand. It's gotten out of hand quick. And the same thing with the NIL. I want to see that as well implode.
The NIL has got to be regulated. It's here now. It's not going to. I don't think it's going to implode. I wish it would, but it's not. I don't have a problem with players getting money. They put in a lot of effort and a lot of time that brings money into the school. I don't mind them getting a piece of the pie. Now, if somebody outside the school business wants to pay them X amount of dollars, I mean, you notice the Heisman commercials. Bryce Young's in it now.
Yeah.
The Heisman house.
Right.
Bryce Young's in it now, which good for him. This is just, the buyout thing really troubles me. It really, really does. At some point, you've got to tell Jimmy Sexton, this buyout stuff that you've created or enhanced or whatever, whoever's responsible, it's not working anymore. Of course, Jimmy can say, well, if you want my client, this other school's going to pay it. Well, we may just have to let them pay it.
But think about what it's created, though, Teddy. Think about Ole Miss. Let's say that Lane Kiffin has a terrible year, following up with another terrible year, and in the middle of the season, you guys are done with him. You're done. But he's got a 5-year contract, and he has to play it out. I mean, he has to coach it out. Do you like the buyout now?
I guess I'll have to wait till I'm sitting in that seat.
Yeah.
I'm talking about just for the state of the game, for the state of college athletics, and I mean, if I'd won that money last night that they rigged up in California, real nice and fresh and tidy, Lane Kiffin leaving probably wouldn't be a thing. But even with that kind of money, I'm not going to pony up and say, yeah, give him $50 million if he sucks. I would never go along with that.
Yeah.
Under any circumstance. And maybe that means the other boosters and stuff are more rabid than I am, and they may be. But no, I'm not giving somebody 40 or 50 million. You can earn it in incentives.
Sure.
But you can't get it going the other way. Buyout is a reverse incentive is what it is.
Yeah, because who cares if you don't win? You get paid your contract. I mean,
win or lose.
Yeah, win or lose. There's no motivation for, and that's something that we don't know about what's going on over there. And we're both speculating on this. But look, I'm in your boat. I think these players are looking. I mean, don't think for a second if some of these players, and the camaraderie between these guys, a lot of these guys could not like him.
Right.
And be ready to say, hey, let's go.
And now that you tie these in together, all these, the NIL, the portal, and the buyouts. If you type, well, you can leave the buyouts out, but I mean, what's the guy? Is it Walter Nolan, the big stud defensive lineman that was number 1 player in the country, or number 2 behind Travis Hunter? I think it was defensive lineman at A&M. What's telling these stud kids? Let me go ahead and just go to the highest bidder. If I don't like it after 1 year, I can leave. I don't really have a problem with that because that's the way it is in the real world. You know,
Yeah.
you go to a company that offers you the most, and you get there, and it's not what you thought it was, you can leave. And unfortunately, college is a business now. And now, if Walter Nolan's not producing on the field, he's probably not going to get that same NIL somewhere else that he got at A&M. So he may figure, I may just need to stay here and do this. So the NIL can affect some portal decisions, you know. And one thing I've said this a long time ago when they were talking about paying players, of course, we didn't know what it was going to be. I always made an example. What if you got the prototype 6'3", 240-pound linebacker from Rolling Fork, Mississippi? Well, actually, there was one named Terry Huzat one time. He went to Mississippi Valley State, believe it or not. He was unbelievable. He could have went anywhere. Could have gone anywhere. But anyway, my point is, you say, yeah, we're going to pay you this much. At some point, if they're going to keep paying these kids this money, if the kid isn't up to snuff, I'm not going to say a kid sucks. That's not right to say it that way. But if a kid's not up to snuff, at some point we're like, all right, you're done. Here, we got to use that scholarship for somebody that's going to perform on the field.
Yeah.
And we're heading in that direction. And it's going to hurt a lot of people's feelings, a whole lot of people's feelings. You know, think you're a stud, think you're everything. You go to college and it just doesn't pan out. I mean, we can all think of somebody that didn't pan out that we thought should have. I mean, just the list is long as this pad here. We'd have to look it up, but we could find something that didn't pan out in college. Lots and lots of them. I mean, and the list is endless of people that didn't pan out. And that's eventually, if they're going to keep paying the players, it's eventually going to be that way.
Look, and I'll tell you something we haven't even begun to touch on. These parents have a lot to say.
Sure.
About this.
Well, imagine I come to your house and I say, well, Mr. McCoy, we understand that this is what you're wanting in NIL money from our school. You have to understand that if there's not a certain level of performance that's expected to match up with these dollars, not only is the NIL money going to cut out, it's probably going to be releasing from a scholarship. A lot of people don't realize something. You know, scholarships are renewed on a year-to-year basis. It's not a 4-year scholarship. At the end of each year, they're renewed. Now, they almost always renew them.
Right.
But it's renewable. They renew them year to year.
But you're still subject not to get it.
That's right. That's right.
And that's what keeps the balance.
Yeah. And that's going to keep happening. I mean, it's going to be more evident. I think the worst I've ever heard was, you remember Rashard Mendenhall play for Illinois?
Yeah.
Okay. I think he was 5'11", 6 foot, 230-pound stud. He was a junior in high school. His brother, 1 year older, named Howard Mendenhall, 1 year older, same exact build, 40 time was similar, but just not as talented. So University of Illinois recruits both of them. They basically recruit Howard to make sure they get the younger brother, Rashard or Rashad, and he goes to Illinois. Rashad ends up leaving, just runs all over the field, all over the Big Ten. Rashad ended up getting drafted in the first round by the Steelers. Yes, now his older brother gets a chance to start. Gone. Howard Mendenhall, the older brother, did not finish his career at Illinois. He left. They got what they wanted.
Sure.
In the younger brother, and big brother didn't even finish career there. Isn't that crazy? He went to the NFL thinking, he'd love to stay with his brother. Well, of course, NFL money. But he went pro and thought his brother was going to stay behind. And I'm not saying they kicked him out. I'm just saying he didn't finish his career there. They offered his brother a scholarship to get him.
Look, this is going to get nasty.
Yeah.
And you're going to get to where you have two good players that know one another. Or you have two siblings like you're talking about. Let's say one of them's a senior and the other one's a sophomore. And he's getting ready to go to Alabama. And Alabama gives him $100,000. But the parents jump in and say,
He's not quite rated as high, but we need about 75 for him.
Right. I mean, it's just it's a wild, wild west with it. But let's get to the upcoming games. I really want to hit first on one that I feel like, gosh, I feel bad for a Nick Saban team that lost, and they have everybody screaming, "We're done here, no dynasty anymore," all this kind of jazz, and everybody's going to say the game after a loss. But you mentioned it earlier. They're not impervious to an upset loss, and I'm not sure that his players believe that they can continue to dominate. I think it's a combination of a couple of things, and I think if Alabama is going into Ole Miss, and look, one of the things I think that is going to drive this game is going to be the fact that they saw how those fans in LSU reacted and carried that team, as far as energy-wise all through the game. I think Oxford is going to be a madhouse.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Now, whether it's Lane Kiffin said in the press conference, he said he hoped the crowd's going to be great. I do too. Should be with the price of those tickets on the Ole Miss ticket fan groups, because they are
skyrocketing.
A lot of people looking, and unfortunately, a lot of people selling. But hey, I know somebody that sold their Alabama Ole Miss tickets and almost paid for their season tickets, so you can't fault someone for that.
Yeah.
So, especially when they have the expectation that Ole Miss is going to lose, which I don't know what to think about the game. Obviously, Ole Miss's strong point has not been to attack the defenders, the cornerbacks, and the secondary. That's not been Ole Miss's strong point. So Jackson Dart's going to have to throw the ball and throw it accurately, and you're going to need a big game out of Mingo or Malik Heath or a combination or some of those guys. Judkins alone is not going to beat Alabama as good as he is. I mean, yeah, I think we can run the ball on them. I really do. And if we pound them for 300 yards, I'm all fired up about it, because if Ole Miss runs for 300 yards, that usually means they're going to win. The only time we didn't run for a bunch of yards at LSU, we lost. So, but, do you really want to face a pissed-off Alabama Nick Saban team? No, but that's who they got to play. And I know Nick Saban, he'll have his guys ready to play. And, with a week off before, I think Lane Kiffin will have our guys ready to play. And, if you don't get excited about Alabama coming to your house, what do you get excited about if you're a player?
Yeah, I mean, this is it.
I mean,
this is what you want. I mean, this puts you in a position to wait for LSU to have a hiccup. One of the things I think that's going to be interesting about this game is the way Lane Kiffin will use the weakness of or the strength of Alabama, and it's their aggressiveness, it's their speed. And I think that he'll make this interesting. I really do. I mean, Ole Miss has played Alabama great in the last 5 years. But, shoulda, woulda, maybe. Who knows what's going to happen. Alabama's favored by what, 12?
I think 11.5, something like that.
11.5?
Mm-hmm.
What are you thinking on this game? Who do you have?
Well, I just thought about something. You know what's going to really make a difference in this game? It shouldn't, but from the outside looking in, is what time LSU and Arkansas play. If LSU and Arkansas play, they're playing at 11.
They're playing at 11.
Hopefully the Ole Miss players don't, and the fans. I don't want the fans to, that are going to the game to be deflated if LSU beats Arkansas and makes it. I don't think it will.
Well, yeah, the players as well.
If you're going to make me bet this game, I would bet Alabama, but I wouldn't bet the game.
I wouldn't bet the game either. I mean,
it's one of those things where I never know what's going to happen, and my record hasn't been that great this year. I'm still going to do some things that I like to do, the way I like to do them, and they've normally been successful. And stay with it. They would tell me to take Alabama, which is -6.5 in the first half. I mean, Would you be shocked if Alabama's ahead by a touchdown at halftime? No.
I would take that in a heartbeat, and I like that.
Yeah. But I don't. It's one of those things. I should just bet on Alabama. So I'll win either way, but you just never know. And Alabama's going to try to run the ball on Ole Miss. They're going to try to, and unless our defense is playing a lot better, they should be able to. So we're going to. Lane Kiffin does not do individual injury reports, but he did say yesterday in the press conference that Ole Miss was relatively healthy, and that's a good thing because it hadn't been in a while. Against Alabama, you're going to need Judkins and Zach Evans, and not just Judkins.
Yeah, Zach Evans is key to me. Zach, he's key to Judkins.
Yeah,
being able to spell him is what makes Judkins so effective.
Right.
And not to mention, I mean, Evans is a hell of a running back himself.
He is.
I think this is going to. I think if it follows the way you're talking about, and not being surprised with Alabama being up by 7 at halftime, I find that to be a huge, feather in your cap going into halftime. If you're Ole Miss, say, hey, look, we've run with these guys for a half, and I think the longer you let Ole Miss hang around, the more they're going to believe, and the more the fans will believe.
And Ole Miss didn't finish the game, but I mean, at the beginning of the Ole Miss LSU game, everything was going Ole Miss's way. I mean, at Ole Miss was responsible for the way things were going. It wasn't just happenstance, but they were. It looked like the route was on at first, in Baton Rouge. Now that turned out not to be the case. So absolutely, I think Ole Miss can play with LSU, even though the final scoreboard didn't reflect that. I think they can. I think they can play with Alabama. We'll see. And I normally don't bet games where I think somebody can play. I mean, I try to pick the powerhouse, but I'm not going to pick the powerhouse if I think the other team can play with them.
Yeah.
And it's back to transfer portal. It's it's leveled the playing field. I mean, Zach Evans was the number 1 recruit in the country for a while when he was in high school, and now that guy's on your team. Jackson Dart was, I think, National High School Player of the Year, and that guy's on your roster. So had those guys both come to Ole Miss in the same year as straight out of high school and some other studs, you start piling that up like we're laughing at Jimbo about for piling up these recruiting classes, except for Lane just did it through the portal, which actually getting talent through the portal to me is more powerful immediately than it is than a recruiting class, because you're recruiting players that have contributed on a college football field versus players that never have contributed on the college football field. I mean, they're proven, which is hurting a lot of kids, and a lot of kids are having to go to JUCO because of the portal. I was happy that Tyler Knight from Ole Miss landed at Southern Mississippi. I'm glad he didn't. I'm glad he's getting to finish out his year, and he's playing on a decent Southern team, and having a pretty good year. So
I think you're playing the law, and you're doing the right thing. If you're going to lay a bet, you play the law of large numbers. You're going to go with the team that you would normally bet because of what you know about them, who's a better team. And we'd have to admit, I think we both would, that Alabama's been a better team. So I think you're laying the money in the right place. Georgia's going to Mississippi State this weekend.
Yep.
And they're a big favorite. They're 16.5 points.
Is it really a big favorite, though?
I think it is. I think an SEC game, when you get into the deep double digits, I think it ends up, to me, it's a big the reason why I think it's a big favorite is, Mississippi State's a pretty dangerous team. I think they are. I think that Will Rogers is a phenomenal quarterback. I feel like his receivers are they're in the system. It's worked for them. It's been proven. They've had games where they're in control. I mean, they throttled A&M. I mean, it was a beating. And that game was at College Station.
Yeah,
I mean that's an incredible win for them. But this game to me, it's going to be it's going to be a beating for Georgia. I feel like they go in there and I feel like they control it. But I feel like State will try to impose what they impose.
I think Georgia tries to play the same way they did with Tennessee, even though State and Tennessee play completely different. I think Georgia goes in there and tries to run the ball down their throat, gets out to a lead, gets out to a 2-3 touchdown lead, and commits to just running the ball and having long drives, and not saying killing the clock, but killing the clock.
Yeah,
I mean that's how you wind up with a 34, 37. Let's see, what's Mississippi State, 17 or 21? So I'm gonna say 34-17, something like that. Georgia, which barely covers it enough to. If you think it's going to be that close, you shouldn't be touching it if it's 16.5.
I think Georgia's going to be real stingy on defense. I think it's going to be something that State, they get a large dose of. But I tell you what they won't do, and I guarantee you, and you know this, Georgia's in the driver's seat, and any opportunity they get up and they feel safe, they're not going to take risk, and they're going to take their players out.
And they should rest. You got to rest them up for the SEC championship. You got to rest them up for the playoff.
This is a short run before Atlanta, and I don't think they're going to take any risk. It doesn't look like any team remaining on the schedule is going to give them any problems. So
I'll take Georgia minus 8.5 in the first half on that game. That could be a halftime happy.
Yeah, I like that one.
And another halftime happy we hadn't really talked about. I don't think anybody really wants to hear about it, but I expect Tennessee to bounce back. They're only favored by 21, which is a lot of points, but they're 10.5 in the first half against Missouri, and I think they bounce back. I think they keep their foot on the throttle to I think they're 5 in the playoff ranking, so I think they keep their foot on the throttle and hope for a mishap, because at least one team ahead of them will lose, either Ohio State or Michigan. And if they can keep rolling with their only loss being to Georgia and having beat Alabama, Tennessee may be in the best situation in the fact that that they can possibly make the playoff without having to play in the SEC championship game.
And they'll make a strong case for it. Look, we got a lot of games that are going to be affecting that layout, and we're not going to get a really clear picture until we get to some of the conference championships.
Right.
And see, now, in saying that, the remaining games of these teams that are in this position, specifically Alabama, Tennessee, you're going to have to throw everything into this, because if it comes down to, how well did you finish the season out? Did you blow teams out? They're going to look at this. This is going to make a difference. So I think everybody's going to be on their, you're going to see teams playing the tough. I know it's easy to jump on a bunch of these favorites, but I think you're going to get the best of these teams the remaining games.
Yeah, I agree, except for that leads me to believe Tennessee's going to keep the foot on the gas. You're going to have to.
I think you do. I think there's no question about it. If you got an Oregon team breathing down your neck at number 6, you're in a race to see who and how bad you can beat people.
Unless you're in the top 4 and undefeated, your foot has to be on the gas.
Yeah. And
you got to keep your foot on the gas at least a little bit, because you don't want anybody to, get 3 late touchdowns and beat you.
Yeah. You're 100% right. The top 4 is not moving. Well,
as long as they win.
Let me say this: the top 3, they're not moving. As far as the a team and how bad they get beat, whoever Michigan plays, Ohio State plays, I don't think the 1, 2, 3 doesn't move. Now TCU, they could move, they could lose, and they could be out, but it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. It's that time of year, man, where things start happening. Which there's still gonna be some things happen unexpected. You just don't know which ones those are.
Right.
Especially you get too comfortable, or nobody's gonna tank on purpose, but they're still kids, and they may lose that fire in their belly a little bit on the teams that aren't going to the conference championship and that kind of stuff. But I think it's going to be an exciting weekend. I don't think everything's going to go exactly like the way we think it's going to go. So I guess that's why they play the game.
Hey, if it's a betting weekend, I want it to be boring and go exactly how we want it.
Every single time. Never happens, but every single time.
That's right. Well, Teddy, I appreciate it. Thanks for joining us again. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget, we will be sending the books out that were signed, Dogpile by Steve Robertson. So we'll be getting in touch with the guys that shared, liked, and tagged the 5 people on our page. We really do appreciate it.